Today we're going to talk about cacao seedlings. When you get them to reach this point, what do you do next? When we come right back. So you've got yourself a cacao pod and you've planted the seeds. And in about 3 weeks, sometimes as little as 2 weeks, depending on your climate, you're going to have something that's absolutely beautiful like these little guys right here. Now, I wanted to point out something important, okay? When I plant cacao seeds, I don't usually use such a small, narrow, and shallow tray. I like to use much deeper. I try to go with at least a 5-inch deep pot to get the seedlings started. You can also, if you have no other choice, you can also use like the solo cups that they usually come in red or they come in, I think they're 8 ounces, and they might even have some 16-ounce ones. So if you can get those cups, just make sure you punch holes in the bottom. You can get your seeds started that way. So one of the things that I wanted to focus on, like I said, is the container that I'm using here. If you have no choice, absolutely, go ahead and use something like this. But here's the thing, if you leave it in here too long, pretty soon you're gonna start having trouble with your little taproot, and it's gonna start to kind of twist around and become bent and become an issue. Your plant's gonna suffer. It's really not gonna grow as healthy as it could if you had given it more attention to the roots of your plant. So let me squeeze this guy out and let's see what happens. I already took one out earlier and he didn't fall apart or anything. Well, let's just take a look here. There we go. So we have a nice little root ball. You see a couple little bit of roots over here, but you can see it has a nice little taproot right down here. There's like a little taproot. It's the main root, and then you got some lateral roots all around it. Now, if it stays another couple of weeks in there, this little root is going to start bending, and then later they're going to start circling. And it's going to start to pretty much have a little trouble with maintaining moisture, taking up nutrients. It's not going to be happy. So here's what you do. You take a little guy like this, and you put him in a deep tube, okay? So you have a nice deep tube like this, and now you're going to have all that room for your taproot to develop, and your seedling is going to look fantastic. Now, I actually have a couple of them that were transplanted to these tubes, but they had actually already been root bound. And what I did is I trimmed them and I put them back in a pot. And it's only been a couple of weeks, but they're looking pretty good. So this is probably a smart move to grab yourself some deep containers. If you can get a deep pot like this, great. If you can't, then use something as deep as this. This is probably, if I'm not mistaken, that's at about I think these are about 10-inch. So these are about they're about 10-inch depth. So these are great if you can get these. Now, the issue with this is that you need to have some way of holding it. So these trays are pretty good. You can get these trays and they come with 25 slots so that you can keep your plants nicely organized. Now, we're gonna walk over, I'm gonna show you one of my large cacaos in 25 gallons. And I'm gonna tell you a little secret about that one. Okay, so I'm gonna be off camera for just a couple of minutes so I can show you this from a distance. This is a 25-gallon cacao plant that you see, and I'm gonna slowly pan the camera up so you can see the entire tree. And this guy is approximately 4.5 years old now. And I'm absolutely so happy with this cacao. I have 2 other ones in the ground, but yet this one, which is in a container, 25-gallon, has already produced 2 beautiful pods. Now, you'd think I'd be able to show you those 2 beautiful pods, and I can't because I had to harvest the pods about 3 weeks ago, and there was just no time to do a video. But I'm gonna look for a photograph. I think I have one, and I'm gonna post it here so you guys can see what the pod looked like. Not when it was fully ripe, but pretty close to being there. And with that said, the seedlings that I showed you earlier in the small tray actually came from that pod. So I'm really happy to say that I have, hopefully, now a beautiful cacao plant that is going to produce a nice harvest of pods that I can enjoy, and I can also plant the seeds. Now, besides planting cacao by seed, you can also propagate them from cuttings, and you can also do air layers. Now, if you don't know what an air layer is, I do have a video on air layering that you really should watch. But I'm going to go over to the tree now, and we're going to talk about the tree and tell you a little bit about it. All right, so before I start this section of the video, I want to point out something, okay? I'm wearing my lychee shirt and I'm doing a cacao video. This is the cacao that I was talking about earlier, okay? Notice it has a little stake in there. It's in the deep pot. And what happened was this guy used to be in a small pot like this one. And this is a great little pot. But when the cacao starts to get pretty big, it's really time to step it up. And that's what I did. I stepped it up into here, and you can see how beautiful in the video it's growing. Anyhow, I'm going to put this down for a second, and it's starting to drizzle a little bit here. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to explain what we have here. Now, I said that this was growing in this pot for quite a while, and that's true. But this guy is a cutting. The other one in the long tube was a seedling. This is not a seedling. I have plenty of them grown from seedlings, but I have some that I've grown from cuttings. And this took, to get to this stage from a little small cutting, this took 7 months. It took almost 4 months to develop roots, and then 3 more months of growth, and it's doing, my favorite word, right? Amazing. It's doing amazing. So now we're going to look at the tree behind me in a little bit more detail. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about cacao. Okay, so now you're looking at the cacao tree in the 25-gallon container, and I'm kind of focusing inside the canopy a little bit so that you can see some of the pods. And they're small, and they're not all going to set. But at one time on this tree, I had 6 cacao pods. 3 were quite large, and I had a good feeling they were going to survive, and 2 of those did. But you know, cacao pods do not always, because you see one there, completely make it to maturity. So, for example, a cacao tree will have thousands of flowers, and as little as 10% will actually produce pods. So keep that in mind. Don't get discouraged. You need a lot of flowers in order to get a good amount of pods. And obviously, if you want a lot of pods, you need a lot of trees. Now, those who know my channel know that I'm in Florida, South Florida, and that I'm very challenged in the winter, sometimes, in growing certain tropical plants because we're in the subtropics. However, this guy, just out of sheer luck, grown from a seed, has been doing amazing from me, and it's in a 25-gallon pot, and it survived about 36 degrees, maybe even 35 degrees out here in West Davie. Was it last year? It was this year, in January, I think it was, and it was really miserably cold. It looked like hell, and it actually had the pods at that time, and it actually, even though how cold it was, it still held on to the pods, and I was able to plant those seeds that I showed you earlier. Now I'm going to change my angle and see if I can show you other parts of the tree from the canopy and explain a little bit about the flowers. Now, you see those 2 pods that are over there? That one that's yellow towards the top right, that one's going to fall off. The one behind it is going to probably make it, and then to the bottom right, you see that little flower that hasn't quite opened up yet? That, we don't know what's going to happen because it needs pollination. Now, pollination can be done by hand, and in the future, maybe we'll do a video on pollinating these trees. But normally, you know, the pollinator, it's not the wind, it's not bees, it's a midge. A midge is basically, in Florida, we call it a no-see-um. It's a very, 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 very tiny fly. There's another one, I think, here. You see? Yeah, there's one right there. See if this thing can focus in. That one's probably going to make it. You can see the one there. It's looking pretty good. And then I think I have another one just a little bit off to the side. You can see that one on the side. There's another one. So there's going to be several pods, and there are plenty of flowers if I go deeper into the tree. But in any event, I wanted to show you that the cacao plant can be grown outside of its normal tropical climate, but you have to understand the pollination that I explained. All right, so right now I'm sitting between 2 cacao trees that are actually in the ground, and they're covered by a papaya tree, a carambola on my left side, and another couple of coconut palms on the neighbor's side way above. And it does not give them full shade, but it gives them plenty of sun, but it's filtered to a certain degree. Now, they had to get used to this because In the beginning, when they were smaller, they were not happy for quite a while, but they adapted to the more intense light, and they're doing well. However, these two seedlings are nowhere nearly as productive, and I've never gotten a pod from these two seedlings. So remember, seedlings is going to be like going to Las Vegas and rolling the dice. You don't know what you're going to get. However, it does produce flowers, they do get pollinated, and I do get pods, but they have a tendency to just fall off constantly, okay? I've been doing some new things where I've been increasing the amount of phosphorus into potassium to see if I could then get them to maybe do better. We're incorporating more minerals and more zinc, but I think it's genetics. I really do. Now, what I wanted to tell you guys is that you can also graft the cacao. It's another way to propagate them, and grafting them is something we'll be doing soon, but I didn't want to do it until I knew I had a really good quality cacao to graft. And I think I'm going to begin grafting the one I showed you guys earlier from the container onto these two cacao trees over here. So this is called a chupon. It's coming right out of here. It's also called a sucker, but in Spanish it's a chupon. This is going to be used as my rootstock for my scion. The scion is the part of the mother plant that we're going to attach to this piece. So what we will do is let this guy continue to grow and get a little bigger, and then when we're ready, we'll cut this, and we have several different ways we can graft it. We can do a cleft graft, we could do a side veneer graft, we could do a bud graft, we could do a ring graft. There's a whole bunch of different grafts. But what we're going to do is, once I'm ready, these two trees that you saw earlier will be converted into a much higher producing cacao plant than what I have here. So we're going to let the chupons grow, and we're going to take these guys to the next level and hopefully get a much more productive tree. Once this chupon begins to grow and it's fused together and it's doing real good with the new scion attached to it, this tree and that tree, we'll cut away the old tree and let the new trees take over. All right, everybody, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and come on back and see us again. Take care.